So first of all, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today's webinar is around getting cloud ready, what to do to avoid a cloud offside. So my name is David McGeough, and before I hand you over to Evelyn, who is our presenter today, I just have some housekeeping rules to go through. So first of all, today's webinar is being recorded. So if you have any colleagues who are meant to attend and they couldn't attend, don't worry, we are recording, and the recording will be sent out to everyone shortly after the webinar is over. If you have any questions today, we do have a lot of people online, so please use the questions panel within GoToWebinar. We do have some time dedicated at the end where we will go through those questions. And then as we finish up today, there will be a short survey, and this survey is really important to us. It gives us some feedback on the content and if the webinars hit the right spot. So if you have any questions around that you want to provide us feedback on, if you have any ideas of future webinars, if you want to get in contact with us, please use that survey to fill in with that. And then lastly, we do have a giveaway today. You may have seen this in the invite email. So we are giving away, because we're in the big competition right now, and hopefully your team is doing well over in Russia. We are giving away a nice goodie bag, a football goodie bag. So within that, there's a nice bag, all New Relic branded, obviously. A stress ball in the form of a football, and a nice sports top. So all you got to do is stay to the end, and you have a better chance of winning if you ask a question. Let me just throw that hint in there. And at the very end, I'm going to pick out 10 winners after the event, and I'm going to email them, and we'll send you off a nice goodie bag. So you can brag around with your colleagues with all the swag you have. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass you over to Evelyn, which is our presenter today. So Evelyn, if you want to unmute your line and take us away.
Super. Thank you, David, very much for getting us started on today's what to do to avoid a cloud offside. My name is Evelyn Ehrlich, and I am Director for Market Strategy here in Europe. I'm very excited for you all to join us, and hopefully you will be able to write down some questions for the end here to get the chance to get some swag. Now, before we get started on our topic of today, as I just moved to Europe back from spending 32 years over in the United States, I thought I'd share with you all some simple facts, which I think are quite important. So when I say football, I don't mean the one on the right, I actually mean the one on the left. When I talk about championships, I don't really talk about the NFL, which, not to belittle, it's a great championship, but I actually mean the championship which is currently going on and known as the World Cup in Russia. And I am actually very excited. I have been watching many games, and hopefully you have too. And hopefully, as David said, your team is winning. Now, why am I starting here? Well, obviously, you already have recognized that we have some kind of a soccer theme relative to our activities here at what we do in Relic. I also wanted to, as I think it is quite important before we get further into cloud adoption and cloud migration and all the different details I want to share with you, add a few other simple facts which are quite important. When we look at our organizations we work with and across our market, we see that when those companies have done early instrumentation throughout their infrastructure in terms of what they're going to move, they actually have received an incredible savings relative to their migration. So here is an example where a company has received $5 million in savings as part of a $31 million migration. This is made up of three different things. First of all, it's the data center decommissioning, and that speed by which they have done that decreased, they had done that 25% faster. They accelerated their run phase by lowering their AWS spend by 8%, and their engineering full-time equivalents, the resources who they actually are using, they actually use 21% less resources. So again, the $5 million saving, at least for some of the organizations I'm working with, are certainly not a small chain, and that amount can be used for something else. So I want to make sure that that kind of stands as a simple fact before we go further. Now, again, making it a little fun on this afternoon, if you remember, Paul the Octopus correctly actually predicted a variety of games in the past. I think in this one, Paul was right. Unfortunately, Paul the Octopus passed away in October 2010. So for this round of championship games, we will have to rely on other capabilities. Now, if I think of a common tale which is related to our topic, we see many organizations we know that many organizations should start instrumenting their infrastructure and their applications before they begin on a cloud journey. Migrations, unfortunately, they only do some of the instrumentation in the migration, and typically many organizations don't instrument until they run their new applications or their applications after the migration. Now, not just are there some challenges relative to where and how organizations are actually enabling themselves through this journey, there are some challenges some of the market studiers, like for example, my former company, Forrester, and IDC and Gartner actually are saying. I think the most powerful one here is 1 in 3 cloud projects will fail in 2018. That is from InfoWorld. Important also, I think, as I have been working with infrastructure and operations and DevOps and CIOs, we see that there is a significant challenge around the skills, and there is a skill shortage relative to the cloud necessary skills. So here you can see Gartner reports that there are 70% of I&O teams actually are experiencing a skills shortage by 2018. Now, the good news for those of us who are in that profession, the bad news for the organizations who are actually leveraging and are challenged with cloud migration and additional adoption of technology. Now, to put this in the right context, I wanted to share with you the adoption of public cloud, but also the adoption of private and hosted cloud, so you can see the differences. Now, on the left-hand side, the adoption of these different kind of cloud models are not one only. Many organizations do a match and mixing of their cloud strategy. But if we just look at public cloud adoption to the top right, you can see that France and the UK and Germany, certainly, again here Germany with 61%, are very aggressively adopting public cloud. Again, I want to say it's no longer a question of yes or no, it is a question of how organizations are actually migrating to the cloud. Now, let's set the stage. You are in an organization responsible for a variety of things, and it is a very big day. You might have had a product launch, or you are in front of a product launch. You might be getting ready for Black Friday, or there might be an election day coming up, or there might be, as we are experiencing right now, a particular championship called the World Cup, and you are extremely aware of what performance and availability and speed and quality of services you need to deliver. So this could be one of the busiest days of the year. However, if you think about the digital economy and the digital business and your company in itself and what you do and what your company offers, every day is a big day. So the question is, are you prepared? Now, at this point, I want to share with you another very important fact. Customer experience today is, particularly as we are exposing our applications and services through digital websites, mobile devices, et cetera, our customers are extremely sensitive to how we serve them. And in a recent statistic I just found, again from Forrester Research, is that 73% of customers who have a good experience will actually return. If these customers have a great experience, 83% of those customers will actually be with you and return to you as a company. I think those are very powerful data points which allow us to think about what do we need to do to provide our customers with a great experience. Again, for that busy day of the year or for every day of the year, the questions you can ask yourself: can you scale? Can you stay operational? And will you survive? Now, I put this picture here on the right-hand side in from the last game of Germany against Mexico. I, as a German, don't have any comments to that, but I thought it was a very pointing or very telling picture around survival in terms of the game last week. So you've been anticipating this, and you have been thinking about what you can do to make sure that you scale. And you know that you have not the possibility within your organization, within a particular line of business, within your enterprise, that you can scale using your own infrastructure. So, of course, you have decided, and your team and your company, again, for certain projects or for the enterprise in itself, that you are moving to the cloud and you have a cloud initiative. You're thinking that this particular initiative will help you scale perfectly to what the expectations are. And of course, you are thinking that there is savings which can be then used for other innovations relative to what you're doing relative to your applications and services. Well, unfortunately, we are hearing different things from our customers. So let me share a few of the conversations we are having. First one is, of course, always the impatience of, as we are going through migration, we hear from either our partners in the technology team or of our customers, why is this migration not complete? Other concerns, particularly from the lines of the CIOs or executives who are getting the bill of IT and are being exposed to the cost, are asking, why is this costing me more? Weren't you promising a less of a cost relative to infrastructure and service delivery? Third, of course, why is the performance so bad? We have actually decreased the capabilities and the performance, and that's unfortunately not a good situation. And there are many other questions you probably receive on a day-to-day basis from your either executives, customers, line of business partners, or technology partners you work with in your enterprise. Again, back to our World Cup theme, this gentleman, I think, again, he's probably thinking right now, oh my goodness, I'm enjoying myself, having a great time at the game, but I'm really hoping that my site is staying up, and I'm hoping also that this migration is completing fairly soon so I can actually enjoy this even more. We do see a significant amount of politics around migrations, and we call this a little bit of the migration nightmare roadmap, typically starting out with, as I already indicated, a significant amount of high expectations around cost and performance. Organizations then travel up and say, and typically enter a blame game state where the intensity to some extent rises, and usually in that blame game, the cloud vendor is at fault. So this is where conversations are happening with the various type of cloud vendors, because it must be their fault that the migration is stalling. Usually that is a very unsuccessful state. Of course, many of the cloud providers who are out there are able to help and support, but again, the ownership typically lies within the team who has and should have done a better job in terms of the migration itself. The business team, or again, partners in other groups, if we're a DevOps team, or our enterprise architects, or folks in development, if we have not yet achieved DevOps, are asking, why is this taking so long? What is happening? And last but not least, of course, the priority and the pressure improves, and costs are not necessarily in line with what is and what was promised, and the frustration of the business is really at the highest point, asking, where is my application? Show me my application. Now, moving to the cloud can actually be much less difficult, and it actually can, the friction of what you just have experienced or you're experiencing can actually be reduced and you can succeed. So what we thought, and I personally, as I have done a lot of work in this space, either here at Relic or previously in my job at Forrester Research, wanted to share with you a successful path forward. Now, if we look at the success in terms of what it takes to be successful in migration, it actually takes a variety of things. So the first one, and a very important one, and really the one which we at Relic like to stress, is having the visibility into your applications and your infrastructure. Now, visibility into all of that, of course, cannot wait until you are already running. It needs to be left shifted. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the term of left shifting. We've used that traditionally in potential performance management up towards the testing team, but the same is true with visibility. So instrumenting your application up early in the process, understanding what is happening is key, and I'll get into much more detail around that. Because again, what we want to make sure is, as we are pressured for speed and for quality, we want to make sure that we find problems as quickly as possible, eliminate them to continuously plan our work. And then visibility provides us a good understanding of what's happening, what's going on, particularly in DevOps teams, where we might want to make sure that we can connect with our players in our integrated product team to share findings and understandings to, again, optimize and improve. So why do measurements actually matter? Well, the earlier you instrument, the more visibility you have, the faster you actually, the easier you can migrate, the faster you go, which why we at Relic talk a lot about this theme of the earlier you instrument, the faster you go. So if I'd like you to remember something from this, besides Paul the Octopus, which I know you will Google after this, please remember making sure that you need to instrument early in the stage of planning to be successful in migrating and running. Now, instrumentation provide metrics, and you might say, well, why do metrics matter? Well, there are quite a few compelling reasons. The first one here on the left-hand side, you see that little burning oven, I guess that's what it is. If you don't have metrics, you're wasting time. You're wasting time in firefighting amongst the different kinds of challenges you have. So having the right metrics allows you to really pinpoint at what the problem is and immediately focus and hone in into that problem and resolve it. Second, I've seen this over and over again, and you might have that symptom in your organization. Metrics avoid meaningless finger pointing. Again, in DevOps team, where we think about fail fast and sharing and learning, this might not happen. But even so, I have seen pointless finger pointing at folks saying, it is your fault, it is my fault. Typically in organizations, there is one of those walls between the infrastructure and the operations team and the development teams. And usually the development teams love to point fingers at their operation counterparts and vice versa to tell them that you're at mistake. The third one, in terms of metrics, it allows us to actually save money, or in this case, if you don't have metrics, you'll lose money because again, you don't know what to solve, and because of that, you waste resources in SWAT teams or war rooms, which might be used and possibly useful somewhere else. Most important here, of course, is your unhappy customer. Again, having migrations fail with poor performance after a migration project is not good for customer satisfaction. And as I indicated, those percentages of 73 for good and 83, if it's a great experience, will stay. Your successful customers and those who are very happy will actually tell others. And if you think about if one of your customers tells 7 others, and again, one of those tell another 7 others, you can calculate for yourself how long it takes to really experience a bad reputation. So, getting into the beef of why and what we're here for is doing migrations right. So hopefully I can give you a plan relative to how you should go about migrations. Now, if you look at these 3 steps, those should not be new to you if you are a AWS customer, because they are leveraging the same 3 steps for their advisories and assessment and implementation plans relative to migrating to the AWS public cloud. Let's dive into plan. So in the planning stage, really understanding your upfront strategy for the migration. That is sometimes very difficult for us to do because all of us, including myself, who have now spent almost 25 years, actually almost 30 years in the topic of infrastructure and operations, we like to get things going. We're impatient and we want to do things because that's what we've grown up with and that's what we know. Planning is sometimes not our strength, but it is actually not that hard. So let's take a look at planning. The first key critical item to do is to take a baseline of your application. Now, baselines can come and can be created in a variety of ways. I've seen organizations who have application baselines in Visio diagrams or in Excel charts, but that certainly is not a tool for a modern organization. Let me share with you here on the right-hand side is a screen which potentially could allow you with New Relic to create a fantastic baseline. In this particular baseline, you understand and need to capture a variety of key performance indicators, which are useful for you to understand before you migrate what is key. So these metrics become very important because those you will be using later on in your migration part to compare against. So you need to gather and measure those as the current state. Because again, if you measure this now and you move on, how will you know the delta if you don't know your now state? And that again is an important part of the baseline. Now, key performance indicators, I've done a lot of work around metrics. Short KPIs come in 3 different facets. There are technical ones. Of course, those range in a variety of depth and width, but these technical KPIs give you a good understanding of how your service functions or your application functions internally. It also helps to understand infrastructure, whatever components you have as part of the application. Second, and I should have said that one first, it's the user experience or the customer experience. You need to understand, are there the right content pieces out there? For example, is the performance of the current application in its current state acceptable, and why? And what is that level of acceptability? Are we getting errors and events, encountering a particular problem already with the application? Again, teams who are either staffing from the service desk or operations teams, or folks who are in the DevOps team who have those details can actually point to the right KPIs. And then last, of course, the business. Are we meeting the expectations of customer retention based on our customer goals we want from our marketing team? Are we understanding and accomplishing the goals that business has set for us? Again, the business analyst, who is typically part of a DevOps team, or who is ultimately our customer of the application, the gentleman on the slide who was screaming, "Where's my application?" He or she should have those types of KPIs. Assembling those in the plan stage and, of course, putting the values there is important. And New Relic can help you in that planning stage with those metrics. Now, here's one of an airline. And you can see a variety of them from a technology perspective. You see the AppDex, which is the index of the health of your application. You see throughput, memory footprint, CPU workloads, even DevOps, how many builds, commits, how many defects have been introduced on a mobile, if there's a mobile application, API errors or crash locations, which browser is being used if we're looking at websites. Those are all technical KPIs. From a corporate and from a customer perspective, what are some of the perceived load times, for example, as the customer sees and looks at a particular website for this particular airline? And again, these are all very contextual relative to your business and relative to what you do. Now within New Relic, we do have a variety of out-of-the-box, of course, metrics, which can be immediately now populated, but there is also extensibility into KPIs, which you think and find are important. The second part of planning is the dependency and the inventory. Now, this is also a very important one. And if we think about application dependency mapping, it's been around for quite some time. Many of us who come out of the age of the CMDB, the Configuration Management Database, probably are rolling their eyes. This is not the same, but it can be. Let me describe what I mean. So here we are looking at a application map or a service map, which is comprised of a variety of components. At the lowest level, we have server, either virtual, or of course the hardware we have sitting in our data centers. What operating systems are installed on those particular devices? Then at the next level, again, sometimes called the stack, as you know, we have our application itself, what application and services and microservices and APIs are part of that. And then if you already have, and if this is already a modern application, but still served from your data center, you will have mobile and websites, which potentially make up the rest of the application of the application service map. You must understand how these components actually work together. And the reason why is because of dependencies. What depends on what? Where and how does the mobile browser connect into the application, and what part of hardware is particularly necessary? So having those maps then allow you to baseline your performance expectations for when you're moving that to the cloud. Again, and it allows you to understand amongst architects, developers, infrastructure folks, operation folks, understanding if there is something missing. Based on that then, still in the planning stage, so you can see how important planning is, you can actually determine a prioritized list of the components which you want to migrate. Because again, speed and quality you want to focus on, and you can't wait until you have everything ready. You might need to migrate in a particular order. So in that state of the migration order, two tasks are important for you. The first one is which components are actually in scope for the migration. Again, earlier as I shared with you the data point on the savings in terms of time, here if you prioritize what needs to be going over to the public cloud, you can actually save yourself a lot of time and a lot of headaches. And then of course the order of the migration, what depending on your baseline and your dependency map, you should be able to determine with your architect partners and your developers, what is the order in terms of migration. Now here, in terms of what should migrate first and the types of migration steps, there are a variety of different types of migration capabilities or steps, lifts and shifts, and a variety of different models. If you're interested in those, I'm sure there are lots and lots of good white papers to look for. However, important for you to recognize is if we think of adoption from a corporate perspective, are there some policies and procedures you need to think about? Are there, from an enterprise perspective or shared service team, some rules and regulations you have to follow? These you can see there on the left-hand side. Many organizations, as I've seen, have certain mandates. Many organizations, of course, need to think about security and other capabilities necessary. On the bottom, you see the different types of application adoption steps, where we have either a step where we experiment, we have potential plan towards the managed components, or we have unique components, and then we have committed components. And again, depending on your organization, this needs to be determined in the plan phase. And typically what we see, we then reach, or you will reach, a adoption sweet spot, which allows you to actually, again, with quality and speed, for a fast migration including the right components with the right baselines, understanding while you're doing that, while you're putting together, again, what the priorities are and the KPIs. So we're still in the planning phase. Now let's move on to the next phase, the migrate phase. And again, as many of us just came back from AWS London, AWS Berlin, and AWS Paris, all great sessions. A lot of customers we had in our booth asked about how can I be much more successful? And we made a big point to stress to those also, be sure to make and look at plan. Let's look into migrate. This phase is the one where you have to have a methodical execution, allowing you to validate and leverage data to validate the goals you have set for yourself in the planning stage. There are issues and roadblocks, and I'm sure you all have seen them. And again, we believe having early instrumentations, you can actually uncover these issues and roadblocks much easier and quicker. Now, the first one, of course, is the application functioning when you are migrating. Is it running as expected on the new infrastructure? Well, there's not a lot of brightness you need to figure out that one out, but certainly this is a very important one. But the more important one is it running efficiently. Migrating an application to a cloud and having it function is good, but if it's not running efficiently, using the right resources of what you have expected, you have failed your project. Because again, remember, you are doing this for speed and quality and performance and cost improvements. That is important to recognize and continuously discuss during the migration phase. Now, how to validate cloud improvements during the migration? Of course, validating is, again, comparing your existing situation of your environment and what you have relative to APIs and serverless and queues and your databases to the baselines you have set in the planning stage. Again, this is where it is incredibly important to have some automation capabilities allowing you to do a before and after on an ongoing base with visibility for your entire team. So everybody is talking the same language, everybody is looking at the same metrics, and together make necessary adjustments to make it successful. Now, the dreaded topic of acceptance testing is, of course, a very important step in the migrate. Here, again, baselines become very important. You can prove your success by looking at those baselines you've set yourself before and compare them when you have migrated. Again, your baselines, remember, are those from an on-premise, and you expect either the same or better improvements around the things you have set out to do. Now, if you are not meeting those, you need to continuously do that and repeat that acceptance testing with your business user, business analyst, and of course with customers as long as you can until you reach your goal. All right, migrate. Let's look at the next stage, which is the running stage. Again, this particular stage, you have now migrated, right? You think you're done, and potentially, again, depending on what shape of organization you have, if it is the cloud team, which now maybe hands this over to a cloud operation team. Well, the cloud ops team now is actually starting their real work, their day-to-day work. And what we've seen is, of course, a variety of challenges. Now, the infrastructure is no longer in your control. It is in the control of your cloud provider. So there is not a lot of control you have, but you still need to think about and know and understand where and how to monitor that, including all the necessary components which are potentially integrated, which means front-end applications, all the instances, and of course, the cloud services, which are providing you the details and the necessary power for your application. You also need to understand application impact. So if you are, for example, adding additional technologies such as Kubernetes, and you have those, dynamic and serverless, and you have a distributed architecture, key is that you understand the impact of your application and continuously observe and again, manage and monitor that. And last but not least important is looking at the economics. Looking and monitoring your cloud cost on an ongoing base relative to what you're spending, or looking at areas of different types of regions, such as multi-regions, which many of you potentially are, need to be thought of and need to be managed and observed and monitored at the run state. So really, again, doing migrations right includes all these 3 steps. And again, we scratched only the surface in the 35 minutes here relative to the different plan, migrate, and run was our last one. So stepping back again, left shifting when you're doing cloud migrations, really understanding what is your strategy up front, determining your metrics, understanding what are you achieving and want to achieve, and having baselines is key. Second, while you migrate, look at those baselines, understanding where you are different and what you need to do to bring it back into the baselines relative to the baselines and the dependencies you have. And then last but not least, when you're done with your migration, running your public cloud and your application in the public cloud to the expectations of your line of business is what we recommend from the Relic. Of course, all of that supported through managing and monitoring your application and infrastructure with our automation tool, which I'm sure some of you already know about or already have used, and we thank you for that. I want to leave you with a couple more things which are important. And again, if you think this is marketing speak, well, maybe, but I do think it's important for us to internalize that your customers, those who are buying from you, who are using your services, who are checking into hospitals, who are flying on your airlines, who are making financial distributions or contributions to your whatever, demand modern applications. I do think, and I know we at New Relic believe, that modern applications actually demand modern instrumentations. And these modern instrumentations help you to innovate because they allow you to be much more speedier in how to innovate, as you can take off a variety of manual tasks and replace them through automation tools and solutions, and allows you to actually flexibly innovate because you have a team which allows a DevOps team to really share and leverage tools of visibility, sharing common language and common metrics for the same and common goal to move us forward. Additionally, innovation gives you confidence. I've spoken to many CIOs who have actually themselves said, CIO stands for career is over. Now, modern CIOs don't think that way because they have the confidence that they can innovate. Organizations who are not innovating are being left behind, and we've seen that in multiple examples. I don't really want to paint and point out any, but if you look around, there are some dinosaurs who have not really had the opportunity to jump and migrate and work, innovate their services, and unfortunately, they are no longer with us. So giving you the confidence to migrate and to scale, again, allows you to be an innovative organization. Visibility is important and gives you that confidence. So before, when you had your previous environment where during migrations you had a whole bunch of challenges, we believe that in the instrumented cloud world, you do need the visibility to ensure that you can plan and migrate and run your public cloud in a successful way for your business. As we're reaching, I want to share with you one more time, repetition is always good, right? Visibility allowing you for speed, and the earlier you instrument, the faster you go for the benefit of your company and your customers. So moving with confidence, allowing you to help become a modern application. Now back to our theme of soccer. One possible outcome could be this. We're not sure. Again, our octopus is no longer around. Another probable outcome could be this. I'm not sure. We will see on Saturday and next week, Wednesday, how my team is doing. I hope your team is doing good, and hopefully we will see each other somewhere on the field. More important, hopefully your cloud migration, your planning, your migrating, and your running is successful. As a partner, we certainly as New Relic want to be part of that and would love to work with you. I want to thank you for your time. And David, back to you.
Great. Great presentation so far. I like the last couple of slides. Well, I'm Irish, as you can tell, so unfortunately we're not in the finals. So I gotta follow other teams. So yeah. So thanks so far. So as you can see on the slide there, along with this webinar, we do have several other events around football related. So we're going to get to the questions in a second. So if you definitely, as a reminder, if you have any questions, please use the questions panel. So Evelyn will have a chance to answer those. If you missed the very start of the webinar, we are giving away 10 goodie bags, all football related. So your chances grow if you have a question. So yeah, in addition to this webinar, as I mentioned, we have some a football meetup in London. We did have one in Berlin, but unfortunately that's not taking place anymore. So yeah, that's going to be removed. So please don't register for that one. So if you go to the bit.ly link, bit.ly/NR football, you'll get access to a nice landing page where it links to the next webinar. So we have a webinar in a couple of weeks' time, which Evelyn is presenting again. We do have a nice ebook and infographic, which have the infographic is kind of plays on the fun side of things and shows some of the stats around the World Cup, you know, fastest goal and so forth, and also relating to some stats around New Relic, around, you know, for example, how many piece of data we collect over, you know, a minute or whatever. So it's quite interesting. Lots of giveaways, so please go there. So let me go to the questions. So I can see we have about 5-6 questions coming in. So one question is the URL doesn't work. Okay, let me fix that. So what I'll do is in the follow-up email, if that bit.ly link doesn't work, which I thought it did, I will send out a link to that landing page. So don't worry about that. So first question, Evelyn, is from Charles Butler. How can governance be used to reduce politics associated with cloud migration?
Excellent question. We do see many organizations starting to actually establish governance teams, which are typically comprised of a variety of stakeholders relative to the plan on a cloud journey. And typically there is financial folks there who have the money. There's a sourcing and vendor managers. Then there are product owners, of course, or service owners or application owners. And then typically also security, operations, infrastructure, and developers. So governance, of course, always helps, as in a governance team, there are goals, KPIs, key performance indicators, and governance plans and strategies, which are then needing to be adopted and leveraging policies relative to either security, such as new things. GDPR is a very favorite one of all of us right now. So yeah, governance boards and governance teams are certainly a great idea. I would highly recommend organizations to go down that path. Thank you. Very good question.
Great. And just to follow up to the whole URL doesn't work, the URL is case sensitive. So if you type in the right case, that should work. Next question from Scott, and it's around New Relic alerts. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this one, Evelyn, but I'll ask it anyway. We may have someone else to follow up with you. How do New Relic alerts work to protect my AWS bills when I auto scale into oblivion? Good question.
Yeah. Good question. Cannot answer that. With 11 weeks in the company, that is just way too detailed, but we'll get back to you, Scott, on that.
Sure. So Scott, if you mark in the follow-up survey to be contacted by New Relic, we will trigger that and have someone follow up with you. So another question from Charles here. Is it possible to run a mission-critical application in parallel both hosted and cloud-based during migration? If not, describe the failover tactic required for unsuccessful cloud migration. If yes, describe how data synchronization is achieved. That's a big one.
Oh, wow. Very detailed. Yeah, very detailed question. Actually, there is a fantastic cloud migration guide one of my colleagues, Lee Atchison, has done, which exactly describes these types of details. And there is also a fantastic research report, which my former colleague, Lauren Nelson, has actually done, which I'm sure Lauren does not mind sharing. So if you want to reach out to me at either through Twitter or LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to share with you those details. Again, also for others, if you're interested in those very detailed questions, happy to assist you and basically send you the right white papers.
Yeah, that's great. Next question from Rick. You mentioned the number of builds deployments as a critical KPI. How would we collect those with New Relic?
So New Relic itself has a variety of key indicators and metrics which are being collected as either the agent is installed on the infrastructure or an agent is installed on your application, or if you have, for example, web browser, or you are needing some synthetic details, synthetic polls are going out. So these agents then create and store and leverage what's there on your, again, AKA service, depending on what the service looks like. And that collection mechanism, of course, is available to you. New Relic in itself, we actually have a significant amount of metrics on a daily base, actually on an hourly base, I believe. It's 1.8 billion metrics on an hourly base. Or is it on a minute? I'm not sure. It's the hour or minutes, but an incredible amount of data we collect from all of our customers. Those are then available to you through either Insights, which is the dashboard allowing you to look at the different types of things, or through the different modules which we have, such as application performance management, infrastructure, browser, or the mobile. And again, into deep dives of those, into those dashboards, your data, your instrumentation you have done is available to you with actionable intelligence, with connecting to those things and getting the details you need to make corrections.
Great. Next question, a few more questions left. What is the greatest challenge seen in the field, I assume, during a cloud migration? What's the most
I think
common?
it depends on, yeah, I think it depends on who you ask, right? If you think of cost, I just spoke to a gentleman from Trainline, and this is a public reference. Their challenges were that they actually had visibility before their migration, visibility into the savings they had said they will achieve. And so adopting and leveraging New Relic, they actually achieved an incredible amount of savings and leveraged that funding into some other projects. And there's a great case study on the New Relic website. If you like, go for it, look for Trainline. Other challenges are the missing of certain components, so not having the visibility into the application dependency. Again, applications are, as they're sitting in your infrastructure, in your data center, fairly complex, as we all know. Having that visibility and knowing and understanding dependencies so that before you migrate, you can have a good plan. We've seen that at a recent institution as well. So that visibility is important. That's a second critical capability. And then third, if we think about DevOps teams today, sometimes I recognize that in organizations, we call it a swivel chair correlation, which meant that one person looked at some dashboard, another person looked at another dashboard, and the third person looked at the third dashboard, and they somehow, through swivel chair, meaning they're sitting on their chair and they're swiveling, are correlating that data. Well, that's not very good, because you run the danger of looking at multiple different data points and not being able to actually come to a common conclusion. So having federated insight in a single dashboard, personified for you, allowing you the single source of truth to take action and to understand, is absolutely critical in such a migration. So those are some of the 3 key things from top of my head, I can think of, which are some challenges we've seen.
Great. So 2 more questions. The next one is a great question from Vilas. How long does an organization, or how long should an organization invest in the planning stage? Usually this step is neglected and the focus is more on getting the ball rolling as soon as possible.
Yeah, it depends on size and scope. We have had organizations who, depending on their size and scope, can do a plan in a week. But we also have seen organizations which are large conglomerates who have a very large migration plan with a lot of dependencies, have done a planning phase more in 3 months or in 6 months, right? So there isn't a single answer to that. Unfortunately, there's not something like, here is the guidance. There is, of course, help for that stage, either from us at Relic or from your cloud provider, who has either assessments, documents, and details which allow you to accelerate that phase. So certainly not a one single answer, but again, I've seen 1-week plans to 6 months plans. And then, of course, once you have done a migration, you get better. Your planning gets better because you are much more, you've learned, you have failed, and you have learned from those failures, which you can then, in a continuous improvement perspective, implement again when you do your next plan to your next and on your next business service or application.
Great. And the last question we have, are there some New Relic use cases to increase AWS step functions visibility? I'm not sure if that's something.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I think there is, absolutely. We have case studies. If you go on the New Relic website and you look for, in a search button, depending on which public cloud you are interested in, either AWS, Azure, or Google, just do that search for AWS case studies and the site will take you to success stories. If you can't find it, please feel free to just reach out to me. For 2 reasons: A, we're linked up then together in my LinkedIn, and B, I can point you to the right place to find the case study.
Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending today. Thanks to Evelyn for a great session. And I will be picking 10 winners and I'll send it out to everyone. So webinar recording will follow, and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.